When I had the privilege and honor of receiving the Pablo Casals cello in 2012 for Mrs. Casals, his widow, she basically told me two things. She said, go on and share his legacy, but also find your own voice. And finding my own voice with the cello was not an easy task, because the first few years, the first performances and recordings, everybody expected me to sound like him, to continue what he sounded like on this cello, which is impossible and shouldn't be possible. Slowly I found out that what she meant was to find my voice as an artist, not necessarily as a cellist, and looking into Casals' programs and trying to repeat them, reading his writings, teaching many of the pieces that he taught Bernard Greenhouse, who was my teacher. So having that lineage, this connection, I realized that what she really meant was the humanitarian part of who he was as a human being, as a musician. And I started to discover that my voice as a cellist is really my voice of what I can do with the cello to the community and what I can do with music to the community. And I started conducting more, establishing my own orchestra, the Mount Vernon Virtuosi, that plays for free for the community. I started teaching more kids, younger kids, to share with them the excitement of music. Of course, publishing my children's book, A Cello Named Pablo. So finding a way that I can connect with kids that are not necessarily yet playing music, but I want to make them excited about the possibility of playing music. And my true voice became really what I can do with the cello, what I can do through music, same as what Casals did. And it is still a journey that I'm searching for that voice, but it was clear to me that I'm not here to copy the cello voice of Pablo Casals. I'm here to respect and to be maybe closer to who he was as a human being, and to try to take from it as much as I can and to share with the next generation what I can as a human being and as a cellist. So recording the first 3 suites on his cello was nothing short of monumental, but was sort of exactly who I was as an artist back in those years, trying to figure out how I can carry his voice through the cello, but then taking the 4th and 5th suite on a Grancino in my basement in the studio during the pandemic, recording it just with myself, finding who I am as a cellist, as a human being, as an educator, as a musician, and then coming out of the pandemic, coming out of this with my own cello, with my own sort of approach to the 6, saying, no, it should be performed maybe with more cellists on stage, and combining all my worlds together, the education, the teaching, the few voices at the same time, and the celebration of music through many people at once. It's the best way I can explain what my true voice is and how I found that voice with the help of the Casals cello. I do feel that each suite represents a different stage in our life. The first suite being sort of birth, beginning, G major. Many students, if I ask them about it, they say this is springtime or birds singing for the first time. It's certainly a beginning. And when you play it as a child, it sounds in one way, but when you play a beginning that has perspective, when you look back when you're in your 20s as what you think is a beginning, it sounds different. When you play a beginning when you're in your 30s or your 40s, or when you're a father or a grandfather or a very old person, you look at beginnings differently. And that's the beauty of going back to all those monumental works that represent each chapter in our life. The second suite in D minor is sort of, for me, the stage of teenage days, where We can be depressed. We can have questions. We don't have the answers for them. We think we have answers. We think we don't have questions. We're confused. And the D minor, when you start it and you think of your teenager years, you have so many questions and so many doubts about who you are and what you want to be. It fits perfectly to that key and to that stage in the cycle of the suites. The third suite, the C major, the heroic one, is your 20s, is when you think you're strong. You are strong. Your body is strong, your mind is strong, and you just want to conquer the world. When you have that mindset, when you play this suite, it fits perfectly to the key, to the writing, and to the character. As Greenhouse used to tell me, when you play the suites, the way you start a prelude or a dance is the way you should finish it according to the key of that specific suite. It couldn't be more true than in the C major suite, where everything is heroic, strong, majestic, powerful. You know it. Your answer is in your hands, your answer is in your soul, and you just share it with everybody. The E flat, the fourth suite, is the one that is probably the hardest to play because it doesn't have the natural overtones of the cello, and it requires a lot of stretches from the left hand because of the key. However, it's so heroic, as we know, E flat major key for all composers. Nothing is stronger than that. And this is for me really the 40s, where a person not only is talented and experienced doing well, now is the time to really be successful with everything that you gained in the first, let's say, 20 years of work, next to a great boss, next to being really well trained. Now it's your time in your 40s and 50s. Now it's your time to really be successful with what you've gained through the first 3 suites or through the first 3 decades of your life. That's the fourth suite. The fifth suite, the C minor, is a religious one, is a one that we approach in a certain age where businessmen would say, you know, when you made a lot of money, now it's time to be with your grandchildren and enjoy life. But when you're a musician searching for the answer, it's a time when you say, I've done it all, now I look inside. I'm not trying to impress anybody anymore. I look inside myself to find the answer. Or I look to the universe to see what actually makes this all works. And some people would say God, some people would say religion, some people would say superpower, some people would say nature. But looking for that and finding peace in it comes in the cycle of the suites in the fifth, and I believe in life in the fifth stage of life. The sixth suite, the D major, is the one that I would hope would be the feeling when one concludes life, when you can look back and say, I've done all the stages and I'm peaceful. And with a smile, I'm going to the next life, or I'm closing my eyes. So it's a stage that I would love to have when I get to that stage. I hope in my 80s or 90s or 100s, let's hope. But it's a stage of peacefulness and acceptance that can be really great and strong and powerful, ending a cycle of life. I can envision that stage in my life, lying in bed, surrounded by my family, by my grandchildren, my wife, my kids, and just holding hands to everybody and just breathing my last breath with them around me. That's the stage I would want to have, and that's the stage, for instance, I feel when I play the saraband of this sixth suite. That's the stage I try to bring myself to feel or to imagine when we recorded that suite with 3 much younger people than me, sitting with me at the church with the microphones recording. That's the feeling I wanted to create on stage, of sharing with the next generation, of peacefulness, of just equality and a feeling of looking back and saying, I've done it all, I've enjoyed it all, I'm giving it to you guys now, and it's over peacefully and with a smile. I did not plan to have that journey interfere with the pandemic. But looking back now, I'm quite happy, if one can say happy, about the pandemic, that this occurred during the recording process, because recording 4 and 5 during the pandemic made me play them in a different way. I was just alone in my room with a microphone, and the thoughts, the emotions, the walls that became my audience brought out of me, I believe, a more emotional approach to it, an approach that did not require as many takes and cuts, because I was just playing for myself and the microphone was on. I brought from within my soul parts that I can say didn't know that exist in a way, because of the loneliness and the suffering that we all went through. This was a way for me to experience that loneliness just with the cello and the music of Bach. And it reminded me of my teacher Boris Pergamenchikov saying in the booklet of his recording that at the end of the day, playing Bach for your 4 walls as your best friends is the best way to do it. I never understood it until the pandemic, where the 4 walls were not just my best friend, but my only friend available. And playing the 4th and the 5th, which is really the 2 suites that deal with heroism, being sort of at the top of who you are, the E flat, and then diving into the religious part of our soul, the question of God, the existence of God, the existence of superpower maybe in our personality or in our lives, to deal with just me, the cello, and the walls around me, and the mic, were very powerful and brought out more emotions than the usual performances of those 2 suites. And then leading to the 6th, which is post-pandemic, recording it with 3 of my students made it sort of a celebratory event, a festive event to end the cycle and to go back to life in a way. And I felt that this was perfect, because going out of loneliness, of the questions of who I am and what we are in this world, with the E flat and the C minor, the D major, the festive D major, was nothing short of a celebration, a relief, emotional relief to play. And I couldn't have better companions than my former or current students with me. This was a big adjustment, but in a good way. I felt that the 6th suite always brought challenges to the players that maybe affected the musical result of the actual playing. And that always bothered me as a performer, that for the first 5 I can control and adjust what I want to do cellistically with and to the music, but for the 6th suite I have to make adjustments that are not necessarily musical in order to just survive, quote unquote, as a cellist with what Bach wrote, because he did not write it for cello with 4 strings, as we know. This has been really challenging, performing the 6th suite by myself, and that was one of the main reasons to do the arrangement with 4 cellos. That did not change my part. However, having the other parts with me and having the chords and the rhythmic harmonic structure with me forced me in a way, in a good way, to play it in a more, what I would say, musical way, and not as a struggling cellist, I would like to say. I reached the summit with a smile on my face rather than with pain. To reach the summit with a group could not be a better way to reach that Bach Suite's Everest. Having 3 cellists around me, near me, next to me, supporting me, creating a much more celebration out of this cycle as a whole.